Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Luohan Webinar. It's Xijie from Luohan Academy. Today, we are very happy to have Professor Alessandro Bonatti to talk about his recent work on data computation and digital platforms, which is obviously a very important topic. So Professor Alessandro Bonatti is a John Norris Maguire Professor and Associate Professor of Applied Economics at the MIT Sloan School of Management. Also, he is a fellow of Luohan Academy. His research studies the impact of information technology on firms' online advertising and pricing strategies, as well as consumer welfare. His most recent work explores the role of data intermediaries with market power, how they collect, mine, and monetize information. He has also studied the optimal position of incentives in research-intensive and creative industries, and the resolution of conflict inside the standard-setting organizations. In addition to teaching, Professor Bonatti serves as the editor of Journal of Industrial Economics and the associate editor of AEJ Micro, a Rand Journal of Economics, and the Journal of European Economic Association. Professor Bonatti holds a PhD in economics from Yale University. So without further ado, please join me to welcome our speaker today, Professor Bonatti. The floor is yours. Please take it over. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction and the invitation, Xijie. I am honored to be with you this morning for you, tonight for me. It's a great privilege to talk to all of you and to have such a large crowd. But I think it is even a bigger honor to be affiliated with the Luohan Academy. And so I know I haven't definitely met all that many of you. So I hope we can use tonight as a way to begin a conversation and exchange ideas and ideally projects. In a way that, of course, the pandemic hasn't allowed us yet to do so far. So I'm really looking forward to your questions, to your comments, to your reactions. As you can see from the title, this is a work with Dirk Bergerman at Yale. Dirk is in Europe right now, so that's really the worst time zone possible. So he's not on Zoom right now. This is also very early stage work. I'm sorry I couldn't circulate a paper, but I am eager to get all of your comments. I understand that we have an hour and a half. I definitely don't have an hour and a half of material to talk uninterrupted, and it's also nighttime here. So please, to the extent as possible, keep your cameras on, unmute yourselves, and ask all sorts of questions. I am really looking forward to hearing what your perspective is on the role of digital platforms in managing information and competition. And so the more interactive we can keep this, I think the better it's going to be for everyone. I do have the chat open here. I can look at it, but it is much, much better if we treat this as a regular seminar where you just jump in. Okay. So with that being said, the central idea of this paper is that large digital platforms with market power act both as information gatekeepers and as managers or designers of competition. What do I mean by that? Take your favorite large digital platform. It could be in the US, it could be in China. Where's the value proposition? Well, it most often is to create value by matching buyers and sellers, by matching consumers and the products and the firms that they like. So not only the right sellers, but also the right items sold by those sellers. Okay? And this happens, for example, on Google through a number of sponsored and organic links. Same thing pretty much on Amazon. eBay has listings, both organic and sponsored. If you want to get home renovations, the former Angie's List, now known as Angie, has paid listings for home improvement services. Same thing on booking.com or your favorite travel site. So what is important here is that the value is created by matching consumers to relevant sellers, both organically to a provision of free content and information to consumers, and through the provision of sponsored content that, of course, sellers have bid, paid, signed up for in some sense. They have approached the platform and use it as a paid intermediary. Now, this idea of a number of prominent real estate at the top of the page has sparked concerns for competition authorities and regulators worldwide over the competition, the potential for restricting competition for the consumer's attention. Okay, so this is a slide from my MBA class, actually, where I just copied a quote from the report by Jacques Hermer and his co-authors a couple of years ago over concerns in the EU for the incentives that dominant platforms could have to sell monopoly positions. And this is not an explicit accusation, and there is no data backing it up. I want to be clear about this. But the concern is that theoretically, it would be possible, or maybe even in the interest of a platform, to offer one sponsored link at the top and then degrade the quality of all the other results that they might offer, so that the consumer is essentially faces a monopoly seller, clicks on the sponsored link is worth a lot because it essentially is auctioning off monopoly power. Okay. This concern that we want to take seriously in the paper immediately highlights a fact about all of these platforms, is that privacy and competition policy are going to interact. Now, why is that? Because if I take the view that platforms are selling essentially market power or even monopoly power, right, then I want to be very concerned about how much information about a consumer do they transmit to sellers, because they're going to be in a monopoly position and they are going to have privileged information vis-a-vis a consumer. If, on the other hand, competition is not that much restricted on an online platform, and Google or Amazon or Alibaba, for that matter, were to expose me to a large number of results by similar sellers that compete for my demand, well, then the fact that they're very informed about my taste and they can offer me lots of products that I like, well, then it's beneficial to me because they're going to compete and offer me good products and keep the prices down. Right? So the question of how much information is in the hands of the firms and how much information ends up in the hands of the sellers through the possibility of listing in a targeted way, that is inextricable from the question of how competitive actually is the market for my attention on a search results page. Okay? So this is, at a broad level, the space that we want to live in. We want to have an analysis of both information policies and competition policies on the side of a platform to get to the bottom of a few of these questions. Just one comment on the first slide, which is I have left out all Chinese large platforms on purpose, not because I want to be a rude guest, but because I know so much, you know so much more about them, that part of this role of this talk is actually for you to tell me and maybe have a conversation about differences, across the Pacific, I guess it is, and how the different business models and mechanisms adopted by different platforms operate. Okay, so it's because I don't want to claim knowledge that I actually don't have. Now, what's our research agenda? Well, we want to understand how different modes of collecting and transferring consumer data affect the creation of surplus. And as I said before, this is going to be deeply connected to the question of how do platforms put sellers in front of buyers. Now, you don't need me to tell you that understanding the impact of data governance on creation and distribution of surplus is a timely and relevant question for a couple of reasons. One is that there is increased regulatory attention on whether consumers should own their data, what happens when they do. This is both in Europe and in California and very other US states. There is a technological reason why this is important, which is the amount of data in the hands of platforms or other media is only going to increase from the integration of multiple sources that is just becoming technologically more and more possible. And then there's also a strategic role for why this is relevant, which is that we don't only see regulators working on privacy initiatives, but big tech companies themselves. Okay, so I was actually in the car today listening to the effects of the new iOS do not track provisions on Facebook advertising revenues. Okay. Google is updating its privacy sandbox policies quite often as it's looking for an alternative to third-party cookies. Okay? So in a world where platforms are going to manage both the competition and the amount of information, we want to understand the role of different information structures and different selling mechanisms. And again, as I said before, these two things are not going to be able, we're not going to be able to take them separately. So in practice, what am I trying to do in this model? Well, we're trying to provide, though that may be over-ambitious for research at this stage, we're trying to provide a comprehensive model, not so much of the internet economy, but definitely of digital commerce, or commerce platforms, that has a couple of salient features. One is that platformers are going to be sitting on a lot of data. They're going to know a lot about the consumer's types, and they're going to monetize this data through auctions. That I will take as a given. And the second one will be that the auction model should be flexible enough so that towards the end of the talk, I can compare different information structures and different ways in which consumer information ends up in the hands of sellers. Yeah. The key features of the environment are going to be that all the data that the platform has can create information by improving the match quality between a consumer and the firm that the consumer ends up buying from. And then another maybe more realistic and richer feature that we want to take, definitely relative to our own earlier work, is the notion of product steering. Okay? So there's plenty of evidence, even though it's not necessarily conclusive, that the amount of personalized pricing taking place online is quite limited. At the same time, the possibility of personalizing search results and steering consumers to one product versus another is very much real and relevant and can come very close to achieving some of the benefits for revenue of price discrimination. Therefore, we want to have the option of creating surplus through match quality and distributing it by steering consumers to more or less expensive products, as you will see in a second. And the last feature that our model insists on having is an interaction between what happens on a platform, on the products that I access to on Amazon or the links that I can click through and learn and buy from on Google, and what happens off the platform in, say, a merchant's own store. Okay? And so one of the themes that you're about to see is that the presence of an off-platform, I don't want to say offline, you can just imagine a merchant's own website. The presence of an off-platform sales channel is going to act as a restraint for price discrimination or product steering by the platform itself. Okay, so these are the broad themes of what you're about to see. Yes, Yingju.
Thank you, Professor Bonatti. This is Yingju from Luohan. I was wondering, because you want to take the privacy consideration and the competition policy in one framework, and if we think about both ends in the consumer surplus, then that raises the question that how we gonna model privacy as in the utility function. At the same time, we model like the euro product surplus. So I was wondering whether this trade-off will be in the model, or how you make this trade-off not ad hoc, because that will be the key assumption.
No, it's a great question, and I should have clarified that what I mean about privacy, I really mean how much information about me does a firm have when they're offering me one of their products at a given price. And so in that sense, in the information in the hands of the firm is going to impact my utility, and it will be entirely derived from product market outcomes. So there won't be a direct component, but of course this is a simplification. If I can guess from the tone of your question, I think we agree as to how to do it. I wouldn't know how to, put it directly in the utility function without biasing my results, even though I, as an individual consumer, definitely care directly about what is known and what's not known. So here it's going to be completely standard. But as you will see, the answer is not going to be as obvious as, oh, there's a monopolist quoting me a price. The more they know, the more they can extract. It's going to be a little richer.
No, I agree that the information sharing among the platform and firms are also super important. Thank you.
John and then Steve.
Alessandro, before you get into match quality and product steering, if you think of the platform models as one possible way of bringing in consumer information, in the setting where you have market power and so on, is the platform models kind of optimal in some way, or is it just one way of doing, making good use of the consumer information? What do you think about that? Is it, the question is it kind of optimal in some way of using consumer information in a market power context, or it's just something that we happen to analyze?
Both. I happen to analyze it because it's out there and it's prominent and it's what we have now and it's unlikely to change. Then again, in an unmodeled way, it seems pretty clear that it's not hard to imagine economies of scale in data aggregation and data processing that would sort of directly speak to the information that my players are about to have in the model. But even beyond that, and much closer to the model, even though not in today's talk, network externalities and the ability to have a large consumer base joining that is sort of naturally conducive to concentration at the intermediation stage. Okay, of course there are limits to it. There is not one platform in the world that does all of e-commerce, so it would be silly for me to take this to the extreme. But I'm going to take this as a fact of life, and then towards the end of the talk, I will actually tell you how we think that the analysis should change and the mechanisms should change depending on actually which side of the market, consumers or sellers, the platform is more interested in bringing along.
Yes, for example, if you have, when you think about, for example, I'll give you one example. If you allow for competition across platforms, again, that would bring in issues of optimal design where we don't have enough answers. Am I right? Am I right about that?
You are correct, and I will hate to disappoint you tonight, but it's definitely on the agenda for this paper to think about how the trade-offs that I just talked about or hinted at are going to evolve as the platform's focus shifts from monetizing their own data, think of it as a monopoly platform, to attracting consumers and so providing utility, think of it as a competing platform, right? So part of what we're trying to do here, and what we're doing actively and ongoing, is to have a model that can span across these objectives.
Thank you, Alessandro.
Sure, thank you.
Hi, Ale. Good to see you. And your exchange right now was very much building up for the question that I was going to ask, because at least from the little practical experience I have, it seems like focusing on the consumer is a lot more, conducive for long-term success than focusing on the sellers. You can think sellers come and go, their entry and exit rates and so on and so forth. Consumers, they're looking for places to shop for their lifetime. And as such, there is another, I think, guardrail, so to speak. You're using the on and off platform markets, that the restraints. Another restraint is just the dynamics, in the sense that, if consumers learn one way or another that, hey, there's another deal there that's better for me, and that this platform seems to be steering me towards more expensive, less attractive things, take that, add to that the ubiquity of social media where people share these informations at the speed of light, that could cause a lot of damage for a platform that would do that.
Good. So well, I'll show you the model and we'll come back to this. I have the baseline, I'll tell you in a second, and then one step in this direction, and then I think one can take substantial more steps towards the trying to attract consumers direction. But I also understand that I'm not making much sense of this because I haven't shown you the model yet. So I am very much on board with these considerations. You won't find dynamics today, but there will be a flexible design and questions that we can hope to answer with this model. Okay, so just quickly, where are we going to be touching on? Especially this year, we should acknowledge the enormous debt that all of this literature on information management owes to information gatekeepers, by Bay and the late John Morgan, and the classic paper and following ones. This is not going to be information about price; it's going to be information about quality and matches, but it is very much in that spirit. Okay. Dirk and I have also been active recently in a literature on data externalities on digital platforms, where how much the platform knows about John depends on whether I join or not, because our types are correlated. Now, this is not going to have any of those features, but it's going to have an important connecting aspect, which is the more consumers are on the platform, the better or worse every other consumer's outside options are going to be. So there's going to be an important intellectual connections between the work on externalities on platforms and what we see now. Okay. In practice, it's going to be a model where each firm has a product line and has multiple sales channels, and they're going to interact and constrain one another. So there's a rich and blossoming IO theory literature on this topic, chiefly the work by Junior Wright and his co-authors, but I don't want to leave anybody out. Okay. As soon as I have a model with where sellers list their products, the Amazon and self-preferencing discussion comes to mind. I'm not going to have anything to say about self-preferencing or buy boxes or anything today. I will just note that the extension is pretty immediate and we plan on carrying it out. And this seems to be sort of like the modal topic on this year's job market. Most of the papers in this, not all of them, but a lot of the papers in this bullet point are actually students on the market now. Okay, so these are the main touch points of what we're about to see. So thank you for the big picture questions. I'm hoping to get as many as possible. If there are any questions, I'll take them out. Otherwise, I'll tell you about the formal setup.
Hello, I just actually have a small question.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Sango from the Luohan Academy. So if there's no self-preferencing that, and in your model, what's the a definition of the product steering? So what's the role of the product steering? Is it going to be like a
okay? So let's transition right here. The short answer is each seller is going to offer more than one product. So it's not the platform who's going to steer. It's each seller is going to offer more than one product, and the more they know about me, the more they won't show me all of them. They'll just show exactly the one that they want me to buy. Right? So it won't be a choice by the platform, but the steering will be a choice on the part of a listing seller, right? You can call it obfuscation if you want, hiding other activities.
So type of obfuscation.
Obfuscation, not of competing brands, but of competing product, of their own product line. So let me go through this slide and then I can go into maybe a couple of slides. So the setup is going to be one that looks like competition in nonlinear pricing, though it's going to be easier than that. Okay? We're going to have J sellers. They are offering differentiated products, and each seller, think of it as a brand, really, not different product categories, but we're all within the same category. There are different brands. Consumers have preferences over brands, and therefore the products are differentiated. Each seller can offer a product line where QJ is the quality level chosen by seller J, and seller J can offer a menu of products with different qualities. Okay, so the steering that Sangu was asking about is going to come within the product line that each seller is offering. There's a classic Musa-Rosen quadratic cost for producing quality. We're going to have a unit mass of consumers with type theta. Theta is a vector in Rj because theta J is going to indicate consumer theta's marginal utility of the quality of product J's offers. Okay, so if there's only one firm, this is Musa-Rosen quality pricing, but there are J sellers, and they're differentiated in the sense that I have one marginal utility parameter for each brand. Okay, so if I buy from firm J on consumer theta, my gross utility is theta J QJ, where QJ is the quality of the product of this brand that I purchase. The preferences are common to all consumers, but at least at first, I want to have a very sharp distinction between on and off platform consumers. So a fraction lambda of consumers needs a platform to find a seller, has no other way of finding a seller. Okay? And so once on that platform, we will see that the platform is going to run an auction to match consumers and sellers. I'll give you more details. But the bottom line is that these are consumers with very limited consideration sets and with endogenous consideration sets, because they will only be able to contemplate what's on the page, the results page on the platform. Okay. So the platform is going to control them almost entirely. The remaining 1 minus lambda fraction of consumers can only buy off the platform. Think of it as, you know, going from the seller's website. Okay? So I'll have a lot more to say and a lot of relaxing of this to do, but I think it's useful to view them as initially separate. Right?
Very quick question, if I may, Ale. Could this be relaxed in the sense of, rather than I need a platform or I'm only off platform, a fraction lambda have a preference to use a platform, and a fraction 1 minus lambda have a preference to use offline?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You may even go one step further, and we, you know, I didn't circulate the paper, but we do have it. You could even go one step further and say the ones that are off platform, it's not a preference for platform, but it's a direct preference for revealing information. And so the cost or benefit of joining the platform directly would be related to how much information the platform itself then is going to share.
Excuse me, a quick question. Could you clarify a bit more about the interactions of theta j and qj? Does that mean that, I mean, theta j is an indicator function, or how should I understand that for type theta? And what if the preference of qualities with these types, how the two factors interact with each other?
Okay, good. So your type is not a number, is a vector.
Yeah.
It has one component for each firm. Okay. It has one component for each firm. When you buy from firm 1, your gross utility depends on the quality of the product that firm 1 is offering you, right? Weighted by the relevant component of your type.
Okay. And so I see. So the vector just mean which products I prefer more. Am I correct?
Which
type
which
just
seller you prefer more?
Oh, which seller? Okay.
So imagine.
Thank you.
No. It's you know, there are 129 people on this call. I'm pretty sure this was worth clarifying.
I think it's key to understand the whole story of.
So just imagine that each, you know, you have firm 1 and then through firm J, right? And each one of them is offering a number of products. I think of Q1 now as a continuous variable, right? There's a continuous menu, right? Your favorite product, and for a given brand, you can buy the base version, the premium version, the super version. Okay, and now your gross utility is going to be linear in the quality, but the marginal value of that quality is one of your type components, and in particular, the type component that refers to the brand that you're buying. Okay. So
the difference between you and me is that for each seller, I have a difference. I mean, for each element of the vector, my value is different from yours. That means originally I prefer different sellers from you.
Look at it like, put it like this: both of us like higher quality products, but you may value an upgrade of an Apple product more than an upgrade of a Samsung product. And I may value the upgrades of Samsung more than the upgrades of Apple.
Okay. Go ahead. Maybe I'll clarify myself.
Okay. So how are these So each consumer has this type, which is a vector theta. How is the vector distributed? Let me just, for simplicity, assume that all the components theta j are IID across both consumers and brands. Okay, so that there is one marginal distribution f of each type component. And from the get-go, I'm just going to assume that the platform knows all of these types. Okay. So I think a distinguishing feature of the commerce on digital platforms now, or at the point where we are, is that arguably the platform knows my preferences even better than me, or at least as well as I do. So the platform is going to observe all of the consumers' types perfectly. Now, I'll tell you about the on-platforms consumers in a second, but every consumer off the platform is going to have less information about their own type. They're only going to observe a signal, which leads them to have a posterior mean about their type, mj. So there's going to be one m for each component of theta. Now, the distribution of the posterior means m is going to be g, right? And because m is a posterior mean about the fundamental theta, then clearly f is going to be a mean preserving spread of g. And to make our life easy, let's assume that they have the same support. Now, how do these consumers get matched to sellers? Okay. The platform is going to sell, for today, a single advertising slot, sponsored link, at a second price auction. Okay. It's an auction, so the sellers are bidding. The consumer's type, theta, the whole vector, is going to act as a targeting category. Okay, so theta, right, as we were discussing just a second ago, theta is a complete description of the consumer's preferences. So for now, let's imagine that the platforms allows for the most specific targeting of the bids for sponsored links as possible. So the sellers can specify a different bid for each consumer type theta. Okay? If theta lived in a discrete space or in a finite space, it would be a bunch of categories. Now we're taking this to its logical conclusion. I can specify a different bid for every type of consumer. Now, what does the winning bidder obtain? The winning bidder obtains to post a sponsored link at the top of the page that allows it to condition a price and quality offer on the true data of the consumer. So put differently, if you win the auction for the sponsored link, you get to make a personalized offer to consumer data. Now, off the platform, the easiest way to describe the off-platform model is the diamond model. Okay? So there are very high search costs, which boil down to a consumer with beliefs M visiting the seller that they think offers the most value to them, which in equilibrium will be the one for which they have the highest belief. I'll show you a picture in a second. One thing that I want to clarify now that we have consumers buying from all sorts of places is that we're not thinking about experience goods. So a buyer cannot learn about their type by visiting a seller store, by buying a product, by doing anything like that. The only way to acquire information about your type is to use the platform. Okay? And so this is going to make it then important that some consumers are, either live off the platform or prefer to live off the platform, like Steve was asking.
So Alessandro, feel free to punt on this, and because it might be a bit early to talk about the difference between theory and practice. But if I think of what you're allowing here on bidding, that sellers could offer a bid BJ of theta, that is an extremely rich contingency. Whereas at least today we're talking about age, location, very few broad demographic. And you're saying no.
No, because keywords are infinite. So think about the consumer as I'm saying no because I wanted to push back, but of course I agree with you that it is more. But no, and seriously, think about a search results page for which there is a sponsored listing. Okay, so think of Google or Amazon in that sense. Okay, now I haven't modeled the consumer search behavior on the platform at all, so I'm cheating. But I really want to, we want to view it like that. And imagine that each different type searches for something slightly different, right? And so they convey their information like that. Now, theta, used to be a type, now is really a keyword string of a very precise search.
Right. So now the issue becomes, right, that if I'm searching for athletic shoes, right, then obviously there are 50 differentiated products. And it could be that the platform actually sees things that I bought in the past. So they would have a pretty good idea of my theta J's across these, but the search result, I mean, the query itself will not be, of information when it comes to the thetas. But I see what you have in mind, at least theoretically. Thank you.
So one area that is sort of ongoing work, literally as of these days, but I have something to tell you by the end, I think, is precisely the one that you're asking for. So instead of allowing bidding by theta, we allow bidding by categories. Now I'm going to call that Google Topics or Flock if you prefer, but it could be other coarsenings as you described. And the one that we will have in mind would be, let's just group consumers in broad categories. And so instead of having theta as a targeting category, we'll have a ranking of brands. So, there could still be a very large number of categories if there are 50 brands, but if there were 2, it would only be 2. So, consumers are indexed by, more or less what's the firm that they like the most. And that will, of course, that will change things in more than one way, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
Sorry, I have a quick question.
Yes.
So in here, platform can choose how fine these keywords are. For example, in here, platform can choose how the platform can gather bunch different kinds of theta. For example, let's say there are maybe 4 J's 4. Maybe platform can just make a bunch 1, 2, and 3, 4 now. They can do it. Yeah.
The answer is yes, they could. They won't in this model as of yet.
They can, but they're not going to do it. Yeah.
No, they're not going to do it. Let me go through the baseline model, and actually that will take most of our time, and I'm not going to allow them to do it. But surely, when I talk about different information structures, that's exactly what I want to vary, and I'll do that a little bit by the end. Right? You could have a coarsening. You could have bidding on a signal of theta. You could have bidding on a partition of theta. But in principle, you could do all of that. Then there's going to be another question of what am I able to solve? But yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Alessandro. So I want to ask, why do consumers need to observe a signal of theta? So consumers don't know about their own theta?
They could. So it's a great question. Sorry. They could observe their type completely. It will make some difference, but what we're allowing here is really, if you imagine that the outcome of the auction is efficient, which it will be, then we're really allowing the platform to provide value for along 2 dimensions. One is to put you in front of the firm that you value the most, even if you cannot find that firm on your own, and tell you what your type is then later, so that within that firm's product menu, then you can actually pick what in fact maximizes your utility. So it is not necessary that theta, that M is strictly less informative than theta. They could be the same.
I see. So like different consumers can have different theta, right?
Yes, of course. And then I thought the question you were asking was, and if the 2 consumers with the same theta, one is online, one is offline, does the one offline need to know less about their type? And I'm saying, it can be weekly less. It can be the same, or it can be a little less.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so what's the plan for the next for the remainder of the talk now? Right? So I want to tell you a little bit more about how this environment works. We're trying to, as Steve already pointed out, thread the line between theory and the real world. So there's a bit of detail, but we're almost done. But looking forward, what do we want to do? Well, the first version of the model that I want to show you is the one that the Kremer report warns us against. Okay, so it's going to be an extreme version where on the platform there is only sponsored content, meaning there is only a sponsored link. Okay, so that is of course not realistic, but it's going to tell us a lot about the forces at play in this model of digital commerce. Okay, and then the next step that I want to do is going to be one where there is both organic information, non-paid links, and sponsored links on the platform. And that will do 2 things. One, it will be more realistic. and two, it will provide more information to consumers. You could have it at the back of your mind, attracting consumers like John and Steve were asking earlier. Okay? And then if there's time, I want to go back to this question of how finely targeted are bids and how does that relate to privacy protection. Okay? Extensions that are, they are not even in our files right now, but they could be worked out is, what if the platform is selling some of its own products too? And what if instead of basing their revenues on auctions, what if it charges some fees? That is easy to incorporate, but not tonight. Okay, so let me give you the most stylized version of this model, which is of course also the one for which we can have possibly the sharpest results, and that will tell us a lot about how these on and off platform worlds interact. Okay, so in this version of the model where we're only going to have sponsored content, here's the timing. First, sellers choose what to offer on their website. So what do you offer as a seller on a website? You offer a menu of quality and price products. Right? These are going to be intended for the off-platform consumers who know something about their types M, and they're going to visit each store. Sorry, they're going to visit some store. So this is going to be a traditional screening mechanism. Okay? Having observed, view those as sort of harder to change than bids in real time. Okay, so having observed everybody offline menus, sellers are going to place their bids for each. These are functions, one, a bid for each type theta on the platform. The auction winner, it's a second price auction, the high bidder wins the auction, is going to offer now, sorry, let me go slower. When I know, this can be all automated, of course, but when I know that I have won the auction for type theta, well, I know that I have type theta in front of me. The keyword string is the best way to visualize this, and therefore I know, what their preferences are, and I can decide what to put in front of them. So put differently, together with the bids BJ, each seller is also deciding which product at which price their sponsored link will point to if the consumer clicks on it. Okay. That's the representation in the world, but for a model really means that winning the auction gives you the right to make a personalized offer, QJ of theta, PJ of theta, to consumer theta. Again, this is not personalized pricing in the sense that no two different thetas will get, or in equilibrium they won't, get the same quality at different prices. But it is product steering in the sense that two different thetas are going to be pointed to two slightly different versions of the product, also at different prices. Okay, so this is where the steering part comes from. So the seller who wins the auction, knows the consumer type in the sense that they can condition their price and quality on it. What does the consumer learn? Okay. Well, the consumer learns their value for the winning seller. Okay. And at this point, they face the seller's offer, and think of now firm J being the winner. Now firm J is in the consumer's consideration set. I told you the consumer needed the platform to learn about anything. Now they've learned that there is one brand that fits their need. There is an offer from that brand, but the consumer can also at this point just say, okay, I learned that Apple sells watches that I like. I'm going to go on the Apple's own website and see what they can offer me. Okay? So here's a picture that hopefully summarizes everything that I've said so far. Let me go slowly so that I tell you, exactly what happened. Imagine you have a consumer with true type theta. Okay? If this consumer is one of the 1 minus lambda off platform consumers, they're going to have some beliefs. Imagine that firm 1 is the one that the consumer thinks their type is the highest for. Okay? So if they are offline, they're going to go to firm 1 store. There's going to be a menu that firm 1 offers offline. They can choose to buy from that menu or not buy at all. Okay? That's the offline or off-platform version of the consumer. If the consumer is on the platform as part of that lambda group, let's imagine that despite the fact that the consumer thought that firm 1 was the one that they value the most, it is actually firm 2, the one for which theta is the highest. Right? There's noise in the signal, so it can happen that in fact theta 2 is the largest type component. Now all the firms are going to bid for this consumer theta, okay? And the outcome of the auction will be efficient. I'll tell you in a second. The firm 2 is going to win this auction, and the consumer is going to learn their type theta2. They're going to learn that, and now remember they're restricted. They can only buy from firm 2. This will be relaxed in the other versions of the model. So the consumer.
Quick question, Alessandro.
Hi.
Sure.
Just 1 second. Now, having participated in the auction and won the auction, firm 2 gets to make a personalized offer to the consumer. Now the consumer knows that firm 2 exists and it matches their need. The consumer can accept or buy from the sponsored link of firm 2, or the consumer can buy from the offline menu of firm 2, right? Or the consumer can choose not to buy at all. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alessandro. Yes, so just a quick question. So how the fact that the consumer learns theta2, is that just by seeing firm 2, or is it some kind of an equilibrium because it sees the bid? What?
No, great. Sorry, great question. No, so when and I should have said it, we're trying to capture the idea that once you find a listing, even if it's from the own firm's website, a sponsored listing on a platform, there is information for you there. So it's really hard information that, you see how the product is, you read about it, there's something about it. It makes a little more sense with organic content, but it's actually a direct effect of using the platform that you realize how much you like this thing.
So if the consumer goes to firm 1 not through the platform, does the consumer at least learn theta1? Do they learn the realization, because they had M1, which could be different, right?
No, that's right. So in this version of the model, they don't, and it will be once I'm going to allow the platform to show some organic links too, it will be easier. I'll just tell you the consumer is going to learn their whole type on the platform because they can read about this product and all of that. And so,
okay,
for now,
I understand where.
So this is a restricted version of the model that I think is the more realistic one. But we are taking seriously the fact that when you look at the product, you read what the other consumers who have bought it, what had they said, and there is hard information on it beyond what you can guess in equilibrium from the fact that it must be my highest type, and based on what they offer me, this is what so you will be able to get some of that information. It will be a model with signaling, so I don't want to go there. But I think more substantively, the assumption is that you learn, you have an option to buy, but you also learn about yourself on this search result page.
Okay, thanks.
One question, Ale, I think I understand what I missed earlier. I had the impression that every firm is a product, but now I understand that every firm is a type of product, and within that type of product, they could play with the quality.
Yes, every firm is a brand, and it offers a vertically.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Line. Right? And so these vertical lines are what form the offline menus. P's O for off platform of Q. But then in addition to this line, and now I'm pointing at firm 2, and I'll stop drawing, but I'm pointing to this part of the slide. But then in addition to this menu, firm 2 gets to add a point to it. I mean, it's optimal to add a point because they know your type. It gets to add another price quality point that need not be drawn, and in fact will not be drawn from the original menu, that's sort of your personalized online offer that you can choose. Right? But you don't need to choose it. Now that you know that firm 2 exists, you can buy from what they offer to everybody. Yes, Ginger.
Hi. Yeah, I understand the argument for the like big data know you more than you, so that your consumer eventually learn theta2. But why they don't have the choice to go back to offline after they learn the theta2 and does not satisfy with the offer? Why they need to lock in with this firm too?
Oh, this is just because I want to make it it's just for exposition. Right? I see. So okay. I want to make it. I want to make this point of restricting competition online by auctioning off monopoly as stark as possible. Okay, and so in version 2 of the model, I'm going to do exactly what you say.
Okay,
it's going to be I go to the platform, I learn my type, and then I can go offline and buy from whatever store I want. Right, but that means that that I'm less captive. Okay, so this is the unrealistic version that if you're a regulator, you're terrified of. It's not realistic because you're trying to attract a consumer in real life. but this is going to allow us to make the point in the clearest way, the point being how the offline and the online channels interact. And to be honest, a lot of what happens later is not going to be all that different. So this is a good one to fix ideas. Now, what are the main forces at play? I think many of you are touching exactly on the most important points. On the platform, after having won the auction, each winning seller is going to know the consumer's type. So a very easy result is that, well, at this point, I know their data, I have my cost function for quality, I should offer the efficient quality level. There's no reason to do anything else. So this personalized offer that we had QJ of theta that the winner J does, well, that's going to be the first best quality level. On the contrary, off the platform, well, firm J knows that when a consumer walks into their online store, the consumer must think that their MJ is the highest. Right? So there is information there. They face the first highest order statistic of the consumer's type based on their signals, but they don't know the exact realization of the consumer's value. So they must elicit their willingness to pay by offering a quality pricing menu, as in the second degree price discrimination literature. Now you can imagine that seller J says, okay, great. When a consumer walks into my zero offline store, well, it means that the M must be the highest. Each M is distributed IID according to G. So the distribution is G to the J. I should just look up my Musa Rosen and offer the optimal menu for distribution G to the J. That is not entirely correct because of the shadow cost or the opportunity cost of offering rents to the consumer on the offline channel. Remember that any information rent that the consumer obtains off the platform, well, they could also access it on the platform after you have won their auction and they come back to your store and they buy from you. So there's an opportunity cost of offering high quality and high utility on offline, which is that it's going to make buying offline from you more attractive, even for the consumers that you've bid and won the auction for. Right? So this is going to be the channel through which these two interact. So let me be a little more formally. The auction here is going to create surplus by matching each consumer theta to the firm that maximizes that offers them the highest marginal value. This is going to enable that firm consumer pair to trade under symmetric information and so trade efficiently. In principle, it's going to allow the firm online also to extract a lot of the surplus, right? But only up to a certain point, right? So the quality trade, it's easy to show that it will be the efficient one online, but it is not true that the winning seller will be able to capture all of the consumer surplus, right? If it did, the consumer could just go on the seller's own website and find a product that's maybe not as good for them, but is definitely not priced at their entire willingness to pay. So we're going to call this, following this IO literature, the showrooming constraint, meaning the seller that's won the auction doesn't want the consumer to use the platform as a showroom and then go buy from their own website, wants the consumer to accept the tailored offer that the sponsored link points to. So the net utility that the consumer theta gets online from firm J needs to be better than what the consumer can get from firm J's own off-platform menu, okay, for all theta. Okay. That is the right-hand side of this inequality with the max over M. Then again, the menu off the platform is incentive compatible itself. So put differently, if off the platform, I would tell you my type truthfully and receive a PQ offer from you, then I would do that even if I were coming from the platform and then use it as a showroom. So really, each on-platform consumer at the end of the day only has to choose between what the what the seller offers on the platform and what a consumer with that same type would buy from the firm's own website. And so it's going to be a comparison only of two products. What the sponsored link is showing me and what I would buy if I hadn't used the platform at all from the same firm. So this is the interaction channel and what's going to discipline prices online. Now, I have to build it up a little bit further.
Can I
Yes.
ask one So for the same firm, they can offer different qualities of products line, online, offline.
Yes. So, so put it like this: off the platform, the firm cannot condition on who the consumer is because it's really just holding a website, or think of it as a physical store. Maybe that's easier. Okay, so they have a product line, like Steve was asking, or products that are all ranked by quality and by price. Okay, and the idea, the reason you offer a product line is just second-degree price discrimination. You face different consumers. Some have a value of quality higher than others, so you want them to self-select. Okay? On the platform, after you won the auction for type theta, well, you know who you're facing because that was type theta that just loaded the search for something. So you can make a personalized offer. Okay. I'm not restricting that offer to be different from the one that type theta would get off the platform, but it is going to be true. Okay, so think about it as, you see an ad for something, you click and it says, Alessandro, here's an offer for you. Right? You can buy the product, but you could also say, oh, I like that brand. Let me go to their own website directly. Maybe clear my cookies and go there and see what they offer to the general public.
Yeah, but I think
just to just to follow his question, just to clarify. So in the equilibrium, can I understand in a way that some customers will buy offline, some types of customers will buy offline, because the combination of P and Q will be different from the personalized or product steering type. So the types, some types will buy offline and some types will buy online. Because am I understand correctly?
You understand? No, you have it exactly right. That in principle this could happen. Remember that there is. No, there's too much stuff on this slide. Remember that 1 minus lambda consumers must buy offline. Okay? And then there's lambda consumers who go to the platform. Out of these, you are completely correct that some of the thetas that are in this group might find the offline offer more attractive, and so use the platform and then bounce back and buy from our own website. So it's possible for arbitrary choices of prices, and qualities, this could happen. Now, it won't happen in equilibrium, and so all the consumers who visit the platform will buy on the platform, if at all. And the reason that it won't happen is that it would never be in a firm's best interest to bid and pay a positive price to acquire a consumer and not have them buy what they offer, or even weaker than what I said. If the consumer were to end up rejecting the firm's offer and buying from their website, well, the firm could offer them exactly the same product to begin with. Right? It's kind of without loss that you're going to buy from the firm, but there is still a discipline on the prices that get offered. Okay? So in particular, look at firm J. Imagine that firm J has offered an offline menu QU, so where there's a continuum of qualities QJ and associated information rents UJ. Now, after winning the auction for type theta, how much money can the firm make on that type? Well, they're going to make the efficient surplus, which in this quadratic model is theta j squared over 2, minus the utility that type theta would get if they were to buy offline. Okay, or put differently, I can offer this type J the efficient quality. I can make them a personalized offer, but then I need to price it in such a way that the rent that this consumer gets is the same whether they accept this offer or they go and buy from my menu. Were they to go and buy from a menu, they would buy something different, but all that matters is the rent that I leave them. Okay. And because losing the auction in this world where all that can be, where there's only one link on the page and no other way of winning the consumer means that you make zero revenue because somebody else gets the consumer, then this profit level is exactly what firm J will bid. Okay. Now, fix, I'm not going to walk you through the entire notation, but the seller's best response problem to the menus offered offline by all the other firms can be written as the sum of two components. That's clear because there's the offline part and the online part. The online part, the offline part, the first row, the 1 minus lambda part. Well, that looks exactly like a Musa Rosen seller facing distribution G to the J, the consumers with the highest, for which my M is the highest M. The online part, what does it say? It says that on the first integral is over thetas. For each theta, the highest of the competing types needs to be low enough that they buy from me. When they buy from me, I get the efficient surplus minus the rent that I have to leave them, which is the same rent that they would get offline, minus pi, which is the bid, the second highest bid that I have to pay in that case. Okay? And all I want you to take away from this slide is that if you look at the seller's choice to provide quality of the platform, that is the same exact trade-off that a price discriminating monopolist, Musa Rosen, Maskin Riley would face. But when you look at how U0 enters, well, it enters in two pieces, in two parts. One is in the first row and one is in the second row. Right? Why does it enter in the second row? Because any utility level, any rent that I leave to a consumer off platform, I'm going to have to leave it to the corresponding consumer on the platform too. So there's an additional cost in making my products sort of attractive enough offline. Okay, so this is a characterization of the, in fact, the unique symmetric equilibrium of the entire game when only sponsored content is present on the platform. Okay? The quality level on the platform is efficient. That's Q theta equals theta in the quadratic model. That is to be expected. And the quality offline has an ugly but intuitive expression. Just to wrap it up, the utility level of consumer of type theta is identical online and offline, or to put it differently, the efficient product here that I am sold online is priced at a way that makes me indifferent between accepting that and taking my pick from the firm's offline menu. Now, what is this ugly expression for Q0 of theta here? Well, it's saying that the denominator is just the density of consumers that you meet offline. So it's a long expression, but it would be little f in Meyerson. Okay, so it's the usual part. The numerator is 1 minus the CDF minus an additional term. Okay? And the intuition for the numerator is pretty clear. It says, when I have type M offline and I want to give them value, I want to give them quality, and therefore I have to leave them a rent, I also have to give the same rent to any type M prime or M double prime that are higher than this M. But for any utility or rent that I leave to type M prime, I also have to leave it to type theta prime online. And any utility that I leave to type M double prime, I have to leave it to type theta double prime online, where these two are the same. So there is an additional opportunity cost in providing rents to consumers offline, which is, well, these are discounts I'm going to have to give on my sponsored listings. Otherwise, nobody will buy the personalized products that I offer. Okay? And so the fact that for any value that I give to M, I have to give it upstairs, both in M terms and in theta terms, well, this is the F to J and GJ there. Okay? So it's a distortion in like in monopoly pricing, but it's augmented by this cross on-off platform channel. So just to summarize, efficient quality sold to each theta on the platform, and inefficient matching based on insufficient information off the platform because consumers use their M. Okay. So let me make it lighter now and look at some pictures and see what are some intuitive and maybe surprising results that obtain. Okay. This is quality provision as a function of theta online and offline for distributions there at the bottom. Yeah, not much to say. The offline quality, just like in Musa and Rosen, would be distorted downward. It's nil for some types between 0 and 1. The point that I just made before about having an additional opportunity cost is that a seller that only, MR is for Musa and Rosen, a seller that is only present offline would offer the dashed line. A seller that's present both online and offline offers blue in terms of quality online and solid red offline. Now, here's where one has to be a little careful. If I look at the payment that each type makes, it's higher online than offline, but that's not shocking because they're getting a product that is so much better because the quality is not distorted. So this would seem like, I'm paying more when I'm online. It's true, but it's because in this model I'm trading efficiently rather than distorted downward. So the real way to look at it is what are the nonlinear tariffs. So a product of quality Q gets sold online at the blue price and offline at the red price. Okay? So if you think about it as a buyer, a buyer that offline maybe buys that dot from the menu is going to buy this dot from the online menu, which explains why there are discounts for online buyers only. But then again, the same consumer actually will not buy the same thing. There's discipline between these two nonlinear tariffs, and it's given by the fact that the actual rent that the consumer obtains is the same on the two. Right? Of course, the data is not on the picture. Okay? So the corresponding quality gets sold at a discount online, but the mapping between qualities and consumers is different. Okay. So what are some, how does this model behave with all the moving parts that we've introduced? Maybe the easiest one to remember and possibly the most intuitive is that the quality provision of the platform is decreasing in the platform size. After all, you're giving quality offline and rents, and then the cost you in terms of discounts that you have to give online. The fewer consumers the more consumers use the platform, the less of a need there is to do that at all. Right? Or let me put it to one extreme. If nobody used the websites and everybody used the platform, then the sellers will get all the surplus because there will be no outside option for the consumers. So as you vary the composition of these channels, quality goes in the right way. Okay? And in particular, there's going to be a lambda, which is less than 1, for which is already optimal to shut down your store and only sell on the platform. In that case, extracting all the surplus. Surplus is going to vary in a non-easy way with J, so let me show it to you. Let me show it to you next. In particular, the consumer surplus is going to be decreasing in lambda. That's the same intuition that I just gave, and it's not going to be non-monotone in J. Let me show you a couple of pictures and explain to you why. I'm just going to run through a few results, but please, if you have questions or if yes,
yes, yeah. So it seems to me because there are a lot of things going on. So it seems to me that the main mechanism is that the sellers are trying to do a trade-off between online and offline channels sales. Therefore, for his offline pricing strategy, she or he has to sacrifice, lower the quality to ensure there's enough attractiveness for online buyers. And you trying to do a comparative statistics for Q0 or offline price and quantities in terms of the lambda, the fractions of online consumers. But I'm wondering, what if there's no personalized pricing channel? Because the key thing here is whether personalized pricing or product steering is a good thing or bad thing, and what are the key determinants here?
So
I'm not sure if I.
No. Let me see it.
Yeah.
So if I understand correctly, you're asking, what if we keep the advertising part the same online, but then we force the firm to make the same offer to everybody, so that there is no personalized offers online?
Yes.
Okay, so that's going to be very, very close to an extension that I will briefly comment on in the last few minutes. We have 20 left. That Steve was asking. I mean, Steve wasn't asking about this, but it's going to be the answer to the same question when we were talking about how finely or how coarsely targeted the bids can be. So imagine that I force the firm online to make the same offer to all the consumers that see that firm's listing on the sponsor results. That means that the offer can't be tailored to the data because a bunch of different data are going to see that offer. That means that the offer has to be a menu again, so that you click on the sponsor listing and you see a bunch of different product options or versions options from the same brand. So in that case, the firm's problem would be to sell the best menu to the consumers for which it wins the auction. So for the consumers for which my data is the highest data. Well, subject to the constraint that any of these consumers could still go and buy offline. So it's going to be here there was this constraint point-wise that says each object you sell online has to have a bound on the price. There is going to be a comparison at the level of the entire menus. It says your choice from this menu, can't give you less than your choice from the other one. And it's harder, but there are ways to do it. And so it's very much in the spirit of this. The short answer is that it's going to benefit the consumer at the expense of total surplus. Okay, so
okay. I can see
in a price discrimination talk, this will be immediate, but I understand that we have a bunch of different interests. So we should. I'll comment on it more later if there's time. Yes.
Yeah. So I think the key mechanism so far is very clear that if from the platform we can target those data and learn the data. So and then the result so far seems intuitive, but I think, is it possible to make Lambda endogenous in the sense that the platform, more participants on platform know better, so the difference between G and F will be larger. So yeah, I think that's more.
Okay, no, great. So there is a easy way to make Lambda endogenous. I wanted to show you some different results. I didn't put it in the talk, but it's and it says something like, before learning my M, when I am born, before learning my M, I compare my expected utility on these two channels, and I have a cost or a positive, there's an additive term that determines my relative preference for on versus off platform, and I join the one that I think gives me the highest surplus. Sort of all the comparative statics of that model pretty much go in the intended direction. If the platform could choose a mechanism that gives a little more utility to consumers, it would, so that it would have sort of an extensive margin to play with. I think it's rich, it's intuitive, but it doesn't deliver anything shocking. The one that would be really hard would be to say, I am born with an M, I can compare what I expect to get on the platform once I learn my data given my M, and that determines, how many of consumers with an M are going to go to the platform. So that really makes these distributions endogenous, not just the Lambda, but really the F and the G. That I don't have a handle on. I think that's the more realistic one, but it's it's a little bit out of reach. So that's the honest answer. Okay, let me show you some pictures for the following example. Okay, so this is an example where where the true type of the consumer, view it like this, is really binary, is only 0 or 1, but nobody knows what the true type is, not even the platform. The platform has an estimate that puts a lot of density or close towards the extremes. It's a beta with parameter less than 1. It's a symmetric beta, so that with high probability your theta is going to be close to 0 or close to 1. Okay? Whereas without the platform's information, you have M, and M is distributed according to a mean preserving contraction of F, and so M is going to be uniform. Okay? Or put it differently, this is going to be G, and this is going to be F. Okay, so that they cross like that. So for this example, how does total surplus behave as a function of lambda? Well, it goes up because lambda consumers get the efficient quality, 1 minus lambda consumers get a distorted quality provision. Okay, but that is in some sense hiding the fact that the larger the lambda, the bigger the distortions offline, so that if you normalize surplus by lambda, then it's going down because the offline channel is getting worse and worse. As it gets less populated, it's getting worse and worse. Okay. So this is consumer surplus as a function of lambda. I told you already that it hits 0 for some lambda less than 1. That's a critical lambda at which each firm basically gives up on their off-platform store and just extracts all the surplus online. Producer surplus as a function of lambda is harder to grasp. On the one hand, you are there's a sense in which you're competing more intensively because the online market is more valuable. There's another sense in which you're selling less offline, and that reduces quality and prices. Eventually, again, that's the same point. Eventually, once you've given up on your offline channel, then more lambda is just better because you have more consumers. Okay. Now, the results with respect to J, I think, are the ones that are a little more important and more nuanced. Total surplus is a function of the number of firms. Well, it has to go up because the consumer is always buying from the best firm, and these are independent, so I get to take more draws. It's just that the average type in the population is going up. So that had to be. Of course, the IID is not a great assumption, but it had to be true here. Consumer surplus as a function of J is trickier. Initially, consumers ex ante are better off because they get more draws, and so they get to pick a higher type, and then that force is important, and so just the potential surplus that they can generate goes up. Eventually, what happens? Well, what happens is that when there are 25 sellers, right, and I see that I won, and I learned that my theta or my M were the highest one in this industry, well, I put a very large probability on the consumer's type being close to 1, because if it's the highest out of 25, it's very unlikely that it's a third. Okay? Which means that the realized distributions of consumer types that the firms face in equilibrium, right, are so highly selected that there's very little private information the consumer has. Conditional on you showing up to my website, well, it must be that your type theta equals to 1. That means that there's very little scope for providing information rent. The quality offline is going to be distorted, but for the very highest types, and so that there's very little in it left for the consumers. Producer surplus is, I don't have this analytically, but it reflects all of these forces. Right? At first, matches improve. Eventually, competition becomes tougher because the first and the second bid are much closer. But then eventually this other force of extracting all the rent from the consumers actually dominates. Okay, so this doesn't need to go like this, but it can go like this for some parameter values. To wrap it up on this model, the platform revenue is increasing as a function of total surplus as lambda goes up, and is increasing as a function of total surplus as J goes up, and in fact it's converging to 1 as the industry becomes more and more competitive. Okay? So what does this model show? Well, it shows, let me go back to this picture. It shows one important thing, which is that as more consumers show up on the platform and more sellers are present on the platform, here exogenously, if the platform is auctioning off access to the consumer as opposed to showing the consumer a number of listings, well, then it's going to be able to capture all of that surplus, even at the expense of consumer surplus, because the consumer is going to have very little private information after meeting a seller, either offline or online, just from selection effects. So this is the this picture and this result are sort of what, in my mind, substantiate the concerns in the Crimea report and elsewhere, for this type of model. Now, just to give you an overview more quickly of what else we do in the paper, I'm going to move to the other couple of versions very quickly that we have gone through, beginning with the one that Itai was asking for earlier. So go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So, question so even if I go to a store, if I'm a consumer and I go offline, and then I see a price that's very high, I cannot go to another seller, right? So there is a sense of a monopoly even if I go offline.
That's an equilibrium. I mean, that's just a diamond model. It's not my creation. Imagine that there are search costs and they're positive, but they can be arbitrarily small. In equilibrium, every seller posts the menu, processing an identical menu. So in terms of only the tariff P of Q, it's the same. So I start with the one for which I think I have the highest type. That's going to give me the highest rent. If there's no way that can be beat.
Yeah. Okay. So it's an equilibrium that I don't want to move to another place. I get it. I just wanted to make sure that.
I mean, it's an equilibrium. I mean, I can't even claim it. It's really just a diamond model. I mean, there's no. Modular differentiated products, but if you can direct your search the first time, then it's done. Okay, so let me show you a different picture. Hopefully you remember the messy picture that we had before. This is a little bit messier, but far more realistic. Why am I going through this exercise? Well, to show what happens if the platform starts to provide more options for consumers and to, in some sense, manage competition in a more consumer-friendly way. Do the results bear out? The answer is going to be yes. In red, you have the difference from the previous picture. Now, once the consumer goes on the platform, the consumer is going to see one sponsored link and every single offline listing as well. Okay. So there's going to be one sponsored link with a personalized offer by, in this case, firm 2, as well as a number of organic links that point to the menus that these firms are offering to the offline consumers. Okay? And so now you can accept the personalized offer by the winning bidder, or you can buy from any offline menu, PJ of QJ. Now the important let me just leave it at this box. Okay, so don't look at the rest of the slide. What does the box say? The box says that once all bidders now have seen the offline offers by themselves and their competitors, they already know what's going to be the outside option of each type theta, the whole vector, after the auction. So in equilibrium, they will all offer the same menu, but that's not enough. For any realized vector of menus offline, all bidders see what each type theta would choose if they had to, if they had access to all those menus. Okay? So they immediately know what is the reservation utility that they have to offer consumer theta were they to win the auction for theta. And so once you get in the details of this, that means that when I am offering utility offline, and it's true that I'm going to have to pay for it in terms of a discount that I have to give online, but it's also true that that's going to lower everybody else's bids because everybody else is going to have to give that discount too. So what I said is true, and I'll go quickly, but what I said is true provided that that I have any competition at all, right? So if we're bidding for a type theta for which all the, my theta j is very high and all the others are very low, it's likely that there won't be any positive bids by anybody else. So that extra opportunity cost of offering utility offline will only be present with some probability in this model with organic and sponsored content in particular, just with the probability that I am the only bidder, okay? And so that I don't benefit from this extra competitive effect. Okay? So the results are what you would intuitively expect, but it's quite stark and quite clear that point-wise, once the platform allows for organic links to be displayed, then let me just put it like this: the market is more competitive offline and online, and as a result, quality provision goes up. It's still bounded away from the efficient one, but it is point-wise higher than what you would get without organic results. Okay. Now, which one is better for platform revenue? Well, the one with sponsored links only. Why would a platform offer organic links as well? Well, presumably because it wants to attract consumers. You can show that expected consumer surplus will also be higher. Yes, Xuan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the mechanism that the consumers actually will be worse off if there are more sellers. That's a very interesting conclusion. But for me, I think that the key is what is the threshold. So if I understand correctly, it depends on, the consumers doesn't want the differentiation is too precise, so that whatever I encounter or I meet will tell which type, everything about myself to the sellers. That's why I don't want the differentiation of products is too precise. But the thing is, in the real world or in reality, it is really difficult to say how many products will be too much to differentiate me from you, right? Because maybe say for computer chips, there are only limited properties. But for example, for clothes, for shoes, it's really kind of hard to say how many products we need to have in a market to support different preferences. Am I correct? So it really depends on the nature of the products. If I try to extend your conclusion to match the real world. So for example, if the threshold is too high, then
I understand
probably
the point that it's,
yeah.
Of course, it's an empirical question of how many sellers is too much. I think the value of that type of result is to show you that when what's for sale is access to the consumer, right? So you might think that a market with a large number of sellers is very good for the consumer. The point there is, well, let's be careful, because the relevant, consideration set of the consumer is endogenous to the platform. That's true regardless of the presence of organic links, sponsored links, or anything like that. And so it might actually be that it is both very profitable to sell monopoly access, to sell monopoly rights, because if there are 50 sellers or 3 sellers or 6 sellers, then the value of being alone is very high. And that after the auction, right, the market is not nearly as competitive as before. In fact, it was a monopoly in the baseline model. And so the model and that result, show you the difference between thinking about competitive industries in a mediated and a non-mediated way. I don't think it's an incredibly deep point, and I completely agree that in practice, when does consumer surplus go up and down is going to depend on the joint distribution of types for all of these. Okay? But it is sort of point number one that I want to make in the paper, right? Which is selling exclusive access to consumers means that usual or metrics that we're used to looking at might not have the anticipated effects on surplus. The other point that's at the bottom of this slide that I want to that we want to make in this paper is that the product design, the product line design, and pricing decisions of each seller are going to interact with the rules and the ways in which the platform shares the data. right? You were asking me earlier what happens if we cannot personalize offers online. So if bids can be only conditioned on a coarser set of signals, then there is going to be a trade-off. Offers online are not going to be efficient. They're going to be closer to those online. There are going to be more rents for consumers online, but total surplus will be lower. So the overall effect is, at least in the cases that we've looked at so far, are ambiguous. Let me just end by pointing out that I've taken you through a couple, really 1.5 versions of this model, but there are many other ways in which you could imagine managing competition and information. One would be to rank the bids, for example, not in terms of just monetary bids, but the utility promised to the consumer. That is more or less what Amazon does to assign the buy box within each product category. Okay? And if you do that and you don't sell the links at an auction, then you have to charge some proportional fees to monetize. And fees are very easy to incorporate in this model, but they would really turn the logic upside down. In this model, showrooming is not a concern for the platform. The platform already got paid at the auction; they don't care, right? And it's a concern for the firm that would make less money. Right? In all the debate on price parity clauses and most favored nation clauses is exactly because the platform wants to avoid showrooming, because if the consumer showrooms, the platform doesn't get the fees. So there are many different ways of looking at this market, and Dirk and I are in the process of exploring this. But most of what I wanted you to show tonight is a way to incorporate product selection, information design, and mechanism design in a model of commerce. Thank you so much for all the questions. Sorry, we're over time. It was great spending the evening with you.
Thanks, Professor Bonatti. Very interesting talk. Any additional questions? We can take additional 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask one?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Professor Bonatti. I think this is excellent work, and I'm trying to think about how this helps us understand platform on a more abstract level. So I think essentially the thing work here is platform provide a more informative way to know consumer, help consumer learn their type, and also help seller, and also help seller to reach the consumer. In order to make this to realize the surplus from these mechanisms, the platform need to run this auction to charge a cost. So I think this is a little bit like I'm not sure exactly, but a little bit like the search cost literature. So because of there are so many things and the consumer want to find the right price, so they need to, in the end, not only consumer, but also seller need to pay this extra cost to learn. And that's open a new channel for, besides the traditional market, then some surplus and competition thing arrive. And also, I think another key important feature here is maybe due to limited attention. So the platform can only show limited number of links to the consumer. Therefore, in order to bid for this position, these firms need to pay this extra cost. That's caused the interesting result due to the increase of product variety to reduce the consumer surplus. Yeah, it's not the question. I'm just trying to understand how fit in this model into a more broader literature to understand the platform.
Oh, I was taking notes. I think that was a great way to summarize it. I should say it like that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, 2 more questions. Yeah. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was excellent. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So I think one of the thing I have in mind is because in your model, the sellers have the outside option on the offline. It's like a main mechanism that they're gonna actually, the consumers can get the benefit, some surplus left on the table, right? But if you look at a lot of the platform, I think most of the value of the platform, the big platform, Amazon or Alibaba, is coming from small third-party sellers who does not have the offline options actually. if you look at it, actually, I think maybe 90, I'm not sure about the number, but a lot of the actually, so only the big sellers like iPhone, the Samsung, the Apple, Samsung, they have the offline option and customer can actually get to showrooming. I think maybe majority of the sellers do not have the offline option. So if you understand your work through that, on the small sellers do not have the outside option of the offline option, maybe customers gonna be more customers surplus from that small sellers will be like very low because they don't have the outside option. So platform's gonna extract all the surplus.
Yeah, I think maybe I follow on the Sanwoo's point is that for the kind of very mass product, you have this competition between online and offline. Then for those niche product, it's not much competition going on. Maybe, yeah.
No. So I think that's exactly right. So remember the the assumptions of the setup that you're talking about, but you of course you understood it perfectly. The prediction here would be that if you're too small of a seller, or for some reason you choose not to have your own website, it's not quite offline, right? It has to be that you only sell through the platform. Offline is not a great name because it means that you have the Apple Store in the street. That's not what you're talking about. If you don't even have your own website, but there are of course many sellers like that. They only sell through the platform. Then, if the platform had complete information about the consumer's type, then that would be the only place where you sell. It wouldn't even look like personalized pricing. It would just be that every one of your products is sold at a price that ends up extracting all the surplus, right? So if anything, that's a way of showing why listing on a retail platform can be so profitable for a small seller that doesn't have a presence elsewhere, and why they're willing to bid so much. Small businesses, they're willing to bid so much to appear as sponsored links on Facebook, say, or Instagram. Right? So, of course, we don't think that empirically the prediction that then the consumer would have no surplus is true. But, I think in practice, the consumer retains some semblance of private information relative to the platform that will allow them to have an information rent there too. That's not hard to do. We go back to the cohort-based advertising model that we were talking about. But I think the 2/3 of the intuition is there, which is, this channel is very profitable for a small business, and therefore the platform can charge a lot for advertising, which resonates with the, at least Facebook's advertising model for sure.
Yeah, and also I want to ask one question regarding the platformization, because right now the platform has better information about consumers, then it may be kind of rational for them to vertical integrate. To become a seller themselves, not charging the bidding fee or this kind of fees in the transaction, right? They can become seller themselves and can have the whole revenue.
Let me think about that. I think there has to be some sort of entry cost or something. Sure. If I go create my own brand for free, then there's more surplus there. But so I think it's a great question. I don't have an immediate way of fitting it in, but of course it's related to the self-preferencing debate, which presumes that you have your own thing to sell to begin with, right? So for sure, it's very important.
I'm sorry, can I ask one more question? I'm just a little bit over time, but if it's okay, yeah. So I think so the reason that customers are getting worse off when there are more customers on the platform is because all the information is also already revealed, so they're gonna charge the high price for the quality, right? So one of the way customers can benefit is if you restrict that information is not that precise, we can just like a bunch some of them in the partition, but one of the way we still can restore the kind of the match is because in reality in an e-commerce platform they usually have the return, right? Free return especially. So and I think that's one of the way actually because the platform is actually making customers actually choose their own products and choose the product that the most best fitted to their preference. But still, if we have the return, maybe we can still have the benefit of we don't have to rely on the customer's data too much, maybe to give the customer too much, to reveal the customer's information too much, but still leave some maybe customer surplus on the table. What do you think about that?
You were breaking up a little bit. I think the question of product returns and which the level of the theory means dynamic information revelation, because at first I buy and then I tell you if I like it or not. No, I think that's also, of course, wide open and interesting. I don't have all that much to say right now about it, because what one would need to carefully link it to what we've done. It's not like it's not just changing one parameter, right? But what I think, all of your comments about restricting selling mechanisms or information online that the platform has, if anything, one thing I'd like you to take away is that in a world where platforms have a lot of information and they can use it if so they wish, then the source of rents for the consumers is not an advantage that they have relative to the platform about their own taste. They can essentially predict everything that I like. It's more, it more comes from the competition across channels. And it can be across different platforms, across physical stores, own websites versus marketplaces, or whatever they are, right? And so that if you want to look at what are the sources of gains for consumers, it's in fact redundant to look at what happens on the platform. You should just look at what happens in the competing channel, and you can understand all the comparative statics through that. I think this is the main difference between a model of shopping online now from Varian 1980 or a model of sales or shoppers. And
thank you very much. It's excellent.
All right.
Yeah, I think we have to wrap it up. It's quite late in Boston.
Thank you all so much.
Sorry for that.
Thank you again, Professor Bonatti. It's really great talk, and hope to see you soon in our future webinars. And thanks everyone for participation. Thank you.